Let's go ahead and jump into my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2025. Now, I saw a lot of films in 2024. I saw a lot of great movies in 2024. And some big surprises. Some movies that I was obviously looking forward to, and thankfully they turned out to be really, really good. But you never know. Like, typically what often happens is the best movies or the biggest or the biggest surprises are the ones that are the films that you knew nothing about. So even though these 10 films plus a few other honorable mentions, these are the movies I'm most looking forward to. I mean, what most likely will happen is there'll be some huge surprises that will take me back and take you guys back as well. So I can't wait for 2025, and we have some like really big movies coming out this year, I should say. I'm still so used to referring to 2025 as next year. And in terms of, blockbusters and genre films, animated movies, huge sequels, but then also some like really cool smaller movies from some filmmakers that I'm like a huge fan of. But before getting into my top 10, I have two honorable mentions that I want to bring up. Two genre films that I'm very excited for. The first movie that I want to mention is Predator Badlands. And this is a new Predator movie that's being directed, written by Dan Trachtenberg. Now, in case you don't know who Dan Trachtenberg is, he originally started out doing like a ton of short films like online. He did this really cool Portal short back in the day from like the Valve video game series. But then after that, he did this excellent like horror thriller called 10 Cloverfield Lane. It was like one of the sequel spin-off movies from the Cloverfield franchise. Great cast with John Goodman, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and John Gallagher. Just all these characters in one location. Stuck in this cellar, in this shelter, this bunker, while possibly something outside is happening. Whether it be an alien invasion, some sort of bomb is going off, like we don't know. But all the action takes place in that little environment, and you just have great performances across the board, especially from John Goodman, who is extremely intimidating in that movie. Plus, he was twerking in that film. That was amazing, Chad. He did a great job twerking. Listen to all that music. But then, Dan Trachtenberg, he took like a lot of time off after that film. It was a big critical and commercial success, obviously. And I know he did some television, but then he followed it up with Prey, which was the prequel sequel to the Predator franchise. Now listen, the Predator franchise, for the most part, I think it's been pretty solid. Like the first Predator movie I thought is fantastic. It's one of the seminal movies from the 1980s, one of the best action sci-fi films from that decade. I like Predator 2. I like that they changed up the environment, obviously. I thought Danny Glover did a really good job. It's a little goofier than the first film, but it's solid. Predators, I think, is super underrated. And then, of course, yes, you had the Alien vs. Predator movies, and the first Alien vs. Predator is fine. I think it's a big, dumb WWE match. It's a big wrestling match between these two, genre icons. The Alien, the Xenomorph, and the Predator. And really the only bad Predator movie, standalone Predator movie, funny enough, is from Shane Black with The Predator. That movie sucks. For whatever reason, the powers that be, the filmmakers, they said, you know what, the Predators, they don't have like a culture based on hunting. That's not what they're all about. No. And instead, they retconned it and they changed the lore and stated what the Predators are actually doing is they just want to harvest all the autism. They just want to go to all these different worlds, go after all these autistic people, and then take their autism and inject themselves with autism to make themselves super beings. It was part of that really weird period of films where you had so many movies and TV shows that just wanted to lean into the fact that people with autism kind of have superpowers. It's very odd time. And then the Predator franchise was kind of put on ice. But what I loved about Dan Trachtenberg's Prey is that he went back to basics. It's, you have a few people versus a predator. And the whole concept of the film is, it took place, I want to say, in the early 1700s. And instead of following, like a squad of commandos or mercenaries or LA police detectives or something like that, instead you're just following like these Native Americans, these indigenous people encountering the Predator for the first time. And this is also the Predator's first time on Earth. And so they're also dealing with all the flora and fauna and kind of, cataloging and trying to understand it. It was a really cool thrill. It was a great movie. And it brought the Predator franchise back to prominence. And apparently we might be getting a Prey 2 at some point, which is cool, a direct continuation of that story. But this one is different. Instead, Dan Trachtenberg, from what I understand, like there's very little information out on this movie. But what I've gathered is that it's going to star Elle Fanning, and that it's set in like a dystopian sci-fi future. Kind of like a post-apocalyptic wasteland where a predator is traversing this environment. And I guess you're going to be following like two sisters along with a whole bunch of other people that have to deal with the Predator and try to survive against them and this wasteland, which is like, that's a really cool concept. So I'm really game for it. It'll be interesting to see I guess we haven't really seen a Predator franchise. I mean, the Predator 2 was kind of like LA was in the future a little bit, a little dystopian, if you will. Not too dystopian, but going full post-apocalyptic, dystopian future, I think that's a really cool, setting for the franchise. So I'm looking forward to it. Eventually, I want to see a trailer. I want to see kind of what the aesthetics are going to be of the movie. But I really trust Dan Trachtenberg. I wish he would honestly do more things. But so far, he's 2 for 2 for me. Really like 10 Cloverfield Lane. Really like Prey. Very much looking forward to Predator Badlands. So that's why it's my honorable mention. And the last honorable mention that I have is for Leigh Whannell's Wolfman, which is literally coming out a week as of this recording. Leigh Whannell, of course, he's probably best known for I guess more recently his like directorial efforts. He's also one of the co-creators of the Saw franchise. Obviously, he's been a partner to James Wan on a lot of projects. But he's also the director of Upgrade, which is a really fantastic body horror sci-fi film from a few years ago. Great movie, really nasty film. Kind of gave me a little bit of vibes of something like RoboCop. A lot of people said it's like the good version of Venom. But then he also did The Invisible Man. He did an adaptation of that original story. And, unlike, the Mummy reboot from the 20-teens, this one actually, it's much smaller in scale. And even though it's set in, modern times, modern world in the early 2020s, it was very much adhering to the H.G. Wells novel, lead into the sensibilities of that book. And I thought he did a fantastic job with that movie. It's one of my favorite movies of 2020. Actually, matter of fact, it was the last film that I saw in theaters before the pandemic. And recently actually watched it not too long ago again. But that's why I'm also just excited to see what his take on another classic Universal monster will be with the Wolfman. And from what I can tell, like the whole premise is like it's going to be focusing on a family who are relocating from California, San Francisco, California to Oregon, which makes sense because San Francisco is fucking ridiculously expensive. And at some point of this family, the husband is bitten by a werewolf, and him and his wife and their young kid, their young daughter, they isolate themselves. They board up this farmhouse, and they're trying to survive against the werewolf. But at the same time, the husband has been infected, and he's slowly turning into a werewolf, a wolfman. So Leigh Whannell has done a great job when it comes to body horror, especially with Upgrade. I'm very interested to see what he's going to do with this movie, and I mean, you'll know my thoughts very soon since the movie comes out next week. So can't wait for that film. Plus, it's a bottle film as well. And I think that's great. Can't wait for that. But those are my 2 honorable mentions. But now we can go ahead and we can move on to my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2025. And at number 10, I have Megan 2. So Megan, which came out in 2023, that was just a huge surprise. It was a hilarious and very well made horror comedy. The whole idea is you focus on this scientist played by Allison Williams. She pretty much creates this AI intelligence, which she then puts inside of a doll which they want to mass produce as a toy, as a plaything for kids. It's the latest accessory. And this doll, Megan, becomes very overly protective of Allison Williams' niece. And because of that, her programming goes haywire, and she's too good at her job, and chaos ensues, and many murders happen. And it was just such a really fun comedy horror thriller, and it was on like my best of list for most of that year. Eventually got knocked off, but still, I really, really liked that movie. And but she just had those just crazy moments where it was like so unexpected. That trailer was huge, like Megan just popping and locking, and it looked ridiculous. Like it could have gone in either direction. It could have been. I mean, thankfully it was great and it was very funny. And Megan is like this kind of cool, modern, iconic slasher now. But then it could have been ridiculous, and I'm so glad the movie worked. They do set it up for a sequel at the end of the film, so it doesn't feel like since the movie made so much money, it was just, critically acclaimed. Let's go ahead and make another one. I feel like there's a lot they could play around with in this movie, and just with AI in general, and how that's continued to proliferate in some pretty disappointing and horrifying ways. And so there's a lot of material to mine. So yeah, I'm really excited. It's the same team from the last film, so I feel like this is going to be super fun. And I barely have a lot of confidence in this because unlike the first film, which came out in January and just dominated for that month, it owned that month. They're putting this out in the summer. This is coming out in late June, so that says a lot. So very, very excited and it's the perfect title, Megan 2.0, because of course it would be. It's the next iteration of Megan. But moving on to number 9, I have Hard Eyes, which this movie just recently came to my attention, and this is a romantic comedy slasher being directed by Josh Rubin. And Josh Rubin, you might not recognize the name, but he did like a really cool horror comedy from a couple years ago called Werewolves Within, which is based on a video game, kind of, but it's a great horror comedy movie. And the whole concept of this film is that it's following these coworkers, these two people who are working late on Valentine's Day, but they're mistaken for a couple by the infamous Hard Eyes killer, who specifically stalks and hunts couples on Valentine's Day, which I feel like that's a really funny concept, where you have these two people who maybe they're into each other, maybe they're not, but you just have this serial killer where that's their whole shtick, that's their gimmick, that's what they go by, and they're constantly just being trying to kill these two people, the entire film, and I imagine failing and them trying to explain that they're not actually a couple. I like that idea. So, yeah, Hard Eyes. I think a new trailer actually came out for it earlier today. But I saw the teaser. It looks really fun. Can't wait for it. And you guys know I'm a big fan of horror movies. There's a number of slashers that I love and watch religiously every single year. And so we can get like a cool new, slasher film or a new slasher franchise going. I'm all for it. And they got some talent, both behind the camera of Josh Rubin, but then also in front of the camera of people like Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, Devon Sawa, which, have been showing up in a lot of things for years now. But yeah, looking forward to Hard Eyes. At number 8, I have another horror film. I have The Monkey, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King short story from the 1980s. This is being directed by Osgood Perkins, who, of course, is coming hot off of Longlegs. A horror film I really enjoyed from last year. I know some people didn't like it all that much, but I ended up really enjoying it. And the whole concept is you're following these two twin brothers who stumble upon their father's vintage toy collection. They find this little toy monkey in the attic. And I guess them obtaining this thing and activating it, they end up witnessing just a ton of horrifying and somewhat comedic deaths, happening in front of them. And, they attempted to leave it all behind, but then, and they tried to discard the monkey, but then, it all comes back. And I guess years later, these crazy deaths are happening again, and they must reunite despite their differences and their various problems they have with each other to put an end to the evil of the monkey. So again, Osgood Perkins, I think, did a really good job of Longlegs. I like his style. That trailer looked really cool. You have a great cast. Like, you have Theo James, who most recently did such a great job as Bastion, X-Men 97 from earlier this year. Tatiana Maslany's in the movie. Elijah Wood is in this film. You got some talented folks, again, in front of and behind the camera. Can't wait for this. And I'm always game for a Stephen King adaptation. Hopefully it's, I got my fingers crossed. Hopefully it's a good one. But moving on from number 8. At number 7, I have a big sequel, another sequel. And it's for Zootopia. Zootopia 2. Now, Zootopia was one of my favorite animated movies of 2016. Matter of fact, it was my favorite animated movie of 2016, and it was easily in my top 3 favorite films of that year. I mean, it's a direct sequel to the original Zootopia, where all the animals of this world, anthropomorphic animals, from foxes, to rabbits, to water buffalo, to elephants, to lions, the whole animal kingdom live together, side by side in the metropolis known as Zootopia. And the first film, you're focusing on this, the first rabbit police officer, Judy Hopps, played by, I think Jennifer Goodwin. And then you also, throughout her investigation into this thing that's going on, this mass conspiracy, very much like a crime noir, she comes to meet this sly fox, Nick Wilde, played by Jason Bateman. This movie apparently focuses more on their relationship and their partnership as detectives, and they're going undercover to crack a mysterious case, and apparently they're tracking a mysterious reptile, possibly voiced by Ke-Huy Quan, which is really cool. And Ke-Huy Quan's been showing up in everything ever since Everything Everywhere All at Once, and been doing a lot of animated projects too. He's very much a part of the of Disney family now. But I'm looking forward to this movie. I thought the last movie was fantastic, and I think they have a big winner with this one. And moving on from Zootopia 2, at number 6, another animated movie, and this one really took me by surprise, especially after watching the trailer. But I cannot wait for The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. Apparently, this is the first original fully animated feature film of the Looney Tunes franchise to receive theatrical worldwide release. And this is not including like live action actors. Like Who Framed Roger Rabbit had live action actors, Space Jam had live action actors and stuff. This is the first time where it's like, no, it's truly theatrical of just the Looney Tunes characters. And it's done the style of more like the classic 30s and 40s Looney Tunes, which I really enjoy. But the whole premise of the movie is it follows Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, who after an accident at the bubblegum factory that they work at, they come to learn of this secret alien plot to take over the Earth via mind control. And pretty much the duo, along with several other Looney Tunes characters, need to stop the aliens and also just try to avoid, annoying the hell out of each other. I was really charmed by the trailer for this movie. I liked, first of all, the aesthetics. It's great to see 2D animation. I really appreciate how politically incorrect it was, which I thought, like, oh, okay, they're going to, kind of make this more like a Space Jam or something. It's geared more towards the kids, and we can't put anything too upsetting in there. It's like, no, they're going full into it, just the kind of the crassness and the sexual innuendo, and that surprised me a lot, and I really like that. And who knows? I hope this is a big commercial and obviously critical success, because I would love to see the Looney Tunes return. Warner Brothers under the David Zumbafu, as I like to call him. I know he's David Zaslav. I call him David Zumbafu. Tenure administration, they're just so dismissive towards animation. I would love this to be a success. Kind of rub their face in after they sold this movie off to a different studio. But again, I think this looks really cool and can't wait for it. And now we get to my top 5. Again, very excited for those bottom 5, including the honorable mentions, but these are my top 5 most anticipated movies of 2025. And at 5, I have Sinners, which I'm really excited about. This is a horror film written, directed, produced, and I'm sure he also handled craft services as well. But this is a project by Ryan Coogler, who so far has not made a bad movie. I've enjoyed every single film that he's written and directed, from Fruitvale Station to Creed, to the Black Panther movies, Black Panther 1 and Wakanda Forever. And this has him reuniting with Michael B. Jordan, who I think is playing twins in the film, along with some other talented folks like Haley Steinfeld, Jack O'Connell, Delroy Lindo. And it focuses on these twin brothers, who I believe are played by Michael B. Jordan, where they return to their hometown and they discover like an evil that has infected it. And the details on this aren't really out there all that much, but from what I could gather, it's focusing on vampires. I feel like this town, this community is being plagued by vampires, and Michael B. Jordan and company are trying to fight them off. It kind of reminded me a little bit of some other great vampire movies that I love. One in particular, Near Dark, which is my favorite vampire film. Kind of like it's a dark gothic neo-western horror, and this just reminded me so much of that movie, which I highly recommend people checking out. And so I was really vibing with the trailers, the aesthetic. There was some creepy imagery and things. They don't show you a lot, but I think that's on purpose. That's the reason. I think they're creating a really cool atmosphere with the movie. So and I just love it when you have like a filmmaker that is dipping their tones into different genres. Like, he's done a lot of dramas, obviously, dramas in general with Fruitvale Station, did the sports drama with Creed, he did a superhero affair of the Black Panther movies, but to see him do a horror film, that has me super excited. So can't wait for that, especially, being such a big horror fan in general. But moving on to number 4, and this is so appropriate. This is my 4th most anticipated movie of 2025. But at 4, I have The Fantastic Four. Now, for those that don't know, I'm a huge fan of the Fantastic Four, the comics, that is. I feel like over the years, the Fantastic Four have not been treated very well in terms of theatrical adaptations. I think the Tim Story movies are wretched. I think Josh Trank's Fan Four Stick is an abomination. I mean, the best Fantastic Four movie is probably the one that they never even released. Now you can find it everywhere, but it's the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, which is hilarious. That is closer to the comics than any other adaptations afterwards. But I guess the closest Fantastic Four film that we've gotten is The Incredibles. Like, people that say like, Fantastic Four are lame, I wouldn't like that. I would ask them, do you like The Incredibles? They go like, The Incredibles, I love that movie. It's one of my favorite Pixar films. I was like, well, then you would love the Fantastic Four, because so much of The Incredibles is based off of the Fantastic Four, Marvel's first family, this family of superheroes. Yes, they fight supervillains like Doctor Doom. They go on these crazy cosmic adventures. They go, across time and dimensions. But at the heart of the Fantastic Four is that they're a family. And yes, they're dysfunctional. They have their issues with each other, but they still love each other, and they overcome those familial difficulties. And based on what I've seen from this movie, them leaning into the retro futuristic look, which has always just been a part of the aesthetic of the Fantastic Four. Marvel like really emphasizing like this is about a family going on an adventure, and just the cast. The cast also like really stands out to me. You have like Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby, who I think is a great choice for Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn, who I think was like definitely one of my big choices for Johnny, and then Eben Moss Bacharach as Ben Grimm the Thing. Plus, you also have Ralph Ineson, who's gonna be playing Galactus, which I think is great. So there's a lot I'm excited about with this movie, and hopefully this will be a great new series within the MCU, which again it needs just new ideas. And I think like leaning into the familial sensibilities of Fantastic Four, that can bring some freshness and some originality to the franchise. But yeah, super looking forward to the Fantastic Four. I really fucking hope they do it. I guess technically, I guess you would say 4th time's the charm, but I guess this would be what? I guess this is 4th time's the charm. Oh, no, this is like 5th times the charm. My math's totally off. Because you have the original Roger Corman film, you have the 2 Tim Story movies, you have the Fan 4 Stick, 5th times the charm. Let's hope they get it right. We'll see. Hopefully this, Marvel will get their groove back with this movie. We just need to see new characters. I think Fantastic Four is a great entry point for a new era of Marvel. But at number 3, this movie was supposed to come out, I think, last year in 2024, but hopefully it comes out this year. But at number 3, I have Mickey 17, which is a black comedy science fiction film produced, written, directed, I'm sure he did the craft services too, by Bong Joon-ho. Whose last movie I absolutely love. Matter of fact, it was my favorite film the year it came out in 2019, Parasite. That was a big year for movies too. That was one of the best years for film ever. I could have easily come up with a top 20 list and said like all these movies are fucking great and perfect and I love them. But Parasite was my favorite one. And the whole concept of this film takes place in this kind of dystopian science fiction world where you have this character named Mickey Barnes, played by Robert Pattinson, I'm a huge fan of. He wants to get off of Earth because Earth's a goddamn shit pile. It's a cesspool. And he signs up to be something called an expendable. No, not the Expendables. God forbid, not that. But what it is, an expendable is a disposable employee who was cloned, where after one iteration dies, a new body is regenerated with apparently most of their memories intact. And I guess one of the disposable people, one of the expendables, Mickey 17, survives trying to colonize this cool new ice world, and he has to deal with his various multiples along with Mickey 18. Again, you have Robert Pattinson in this, who I think has been doing such a fantastic job these last several years, just banner after banner after banner, really interesting projects and movies, everything from the Batman to Boy in the Hair and the Lighthouse. I love what he's doing. Then you also have some other great actors in there like Stephen Yeun, Toni Collette, Mark Ruffalo. Looks like he's playing another asshole in the same way he did in Poor Things. So very much looking forward to this film. I've been annoyed that it's been delayed so many times, but I think this is going to be a big winner. I think it's going to be really, really cool, especially after the guy that did Parasite, which won, just dominated award season. Won Best Picture, Best Director, I think Best Screenplay. So yeah, I think we should. You should definitely. I think any studio would be interested in whatever his next project would be, wanting to push it out there. So I'm hoping for the best. Hoping the best for Mickey 17. I think it's going to be really cool. I've liked the trailer so far. And here we go, chat. Top two. And number 2. And this movie really I was already looking forward to this film, but after this movie's trailer, I went, whoa. And that movie is 28 years later, which of course is a post-apocalyptic horror film that's being directed and produced by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland. It's the 3rd film in the 28 Days Later series, and obviously picks up 28 years after the events of both of those films. Decades after the rage virus has pretty much devastated the planet. You have this quarantine that's been put in place, but then you have some people that are still trying to eke out a bit of a miserable existence amidst just all the infected, who apparently have transformed and evolved and have gotten even grosser. And I guess you follow this one group of survivors who live on this very small island, which connects to the mainland by a single, heavily defended, path or causeway or something. And at one point, the small group of people need to leave. They have to go on a mission, and that's where they just discover all the creepy, dark secrets that in this area, everything that's transpired for 28 years after the rage virus has proliferated. The trailer for 28 Years Later was incredible. Just the audio that was used, I think it was the Rudyard Kipling poem that was used for that. The imagery looked grotesquely beautiful. You have a great cast. You have, of course, you have Ray Fiennes in the movie, Jodie Comer. Aaron Taylor Johnson looks like he's going to deliver a good performance. I'm very hit and miss with him. But hopefully we get more Nosferatu, Aaron Taylor Johnson, less, Kraven the Hunter. But yeah, I was just really taken aback by just how slick and how impressive. They have a bone forest, there's a giant, massive bone forest in the movie. Yeah, very impressive what I saw of the trailer. Can't wait for this. Apparently, it's the first in a trilogy of 28 years later films. I was doing a little research. Danny Boyle apparently is not directing all of them. I assumed he was going to direct all of them, but he's not. The next film, which is called 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, it's being directed by Nia DaCosta, which I am very concerned about. I am not a fan of her as a filmmaker, so that I'm like, I don't know about that. However, with this first movie, I'm looking forward to it, and it's great to see Danny Boyle reuniting with Alex Garland for this film. So yeah, looks great. Looks great. And at number one, chat, and this comes as no surprise for those that know me, my most anticipated movie of 2025 is Superman. Which, of course, is being directed by James Gunn. This is the first theatrical entry into James Gunn's and Peter Safran's DCU, their DC Cinematic Universe. And, of course, you know, we've already seen a bit of what their DCU look like with Creature Commandos, which I've been really enjoying. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already done so. But everything about this film, of course, I love the teaser trailer that was released a couple weeks ago. I thought that was great. I got a good sense of like what this movie is going to be about, the tone of it, and the things that James Gunn has said describing this film, where obviously focusing on Superman, who is apparently struggling to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage with his human heritage, but also, and this is the thing that sold me in the movie. Before I even saw a trailer, it was just this simple line about how James Gunn views Superman and what his Superman's point of view looks like. And he said, Superman is a person that believes in kindness in a world that thinks kindness is antiquated. I'm thinking like, there it is. That's exactly what we need. We don't need a Superman who's a murderer and a mope and knocking down skyscrapers and killing thousands and tens of thousands of innocent people. Like, we don't need that. We need a Superman that inspires hope, that encourages kindness, who puts his hand on your shoulder or embraces you and tells you it's going to be okay, even though it's going to be hard. Like, that's what Superman needs to be. And every time James Gunn has described this film or has talked about, he's leaned into the foundational elements of Superman that have defined the character for decades. And I think that's smart. Like, you can change a lot about, superhero adaptations. You can change the costume. You can change how the villain looks, But the one thing you should never change is the foundational elements that define them. If you do that, you are fucked. Okay? And we saw that. We saw that over 10 years ago, right? We saw the results of that, and it resulted, not to say that universe, DCU, didn't have some good movies. It did, but it fucking died for a reason, okay? It was all because of the decisions that were made at the very beginning. And so I'm hoping that this movie, it's a good foot forward, it's a good step forward, and we build a very nice foundation of something I think will be really cool and really special. But I just want to see Superman smile again. I just want him to be happy and inspire hope. And plus, you have a great cast like David Cornsweet. I mean, Corn's his goddamn name. They might as well be Kansas born. David Cornsweet, who I've seen a couple things over the years. He was really good in Pearl. I really liked him in Pearl. He's been cast Superman, Clark Kent, how he was like portraying Clark Kent as the big goof that he is. Looks great. He looks great Superman so far. You have Rachel Brosnahan, who's done some great stuff, perfectly cast as Lois Lane. Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor is fantastic casting. And then you got like a ton of other people in the movie, like Nathan Fillion, Isabella Merced, Alan Tudyk's in the film. I cannot wait for Superman. I really hope we get the Superman that we deserve theatrically. Like, in my opinion, Chad, we haven't had a good Superman movie since 1981, since Superman 2 of Christopher Reeve. And I love Christopher Reeve's Superman. I love those first two movies, especially the first one. But A lot of the other theatrical, and not to say we haven't had great adaptations of Superman since then, like in terms of television animation, we absolutely have. I've loved My Adventures of Superman most recently. I love the DC AU, like Bruce Timm and company. Their Superman has been great, obviously. Tyler Hoechlin, I think, has done a wonderful job playing Superman, Superman Lois. Like, of course, we've gotten some great Supermans over the years, but in terms of theatrical, we just haven't. And I'm hoping this will be. I'm hoping Superman inspires hope. But yeah, that is my top 10 most anticipated movies of 2025, along with a couple of honorable mentions. But what about you guys? What are some of your most anticipated movies of 2025? Again, I just named 12. There's hundreds of movies coming out this year, I should say. What are some of those movies? Are you looking for any of the films that I mentioned, or are you not? What did I miss one? You're like, Chris, you dumb. You forgot to mention this film. Let me know.
5 minutes later.
Welcome. Jurassic Park, the new one. I like the prehistoric era. I know that's coming out this year, but I'm not looking forward to that new Jurassic Park, or what's it called? Jurassic World Rebirth, I think. Is it Rebirth or Resurrection? I think it's Rebirth. And it's for a number of reasons. One, I just have really disliked the Jurassic World. Jurassic World Dominion was awful. It was so bad. Fallen Kingdom was just as bad. And World was just, I mean, there's some spectacle, there's some fun to be had in that movie, but just overall, it's like it's a pale shadow compared to the original Jurassic Park. It's just a franchise that has never been as good as the original movie. And I love the original. The original movie is one of I have a poster to my back wall, as you guys can see. The original Jurassic Park's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I love that film. But they've just never managed to match up to it. And with this new movie that's coming out, I mean, I'm sorry, but Gareth Edwards is not a good filmmaker. He's just not. I have been thoroughly unimpressed with him for years. I really disliked his first movie, Monsters, which doesn't even have any monsters in it. Didn't care for that. His Godzilla 2014 film is boring. He's not the director of Rogue. Everyone says he's director. He did not direct that movie. That's not him. Tony Gill. There's a reason why Gareth Edwards is not making Andor. Okay, Andor season 1 or has anything to do with Andor season 2. All right. Tony Gilroy saved that fucking film. Gareth Edwards, he made a Rogue One. He made it. We've never seen that movie. What was his last film? It was so boring. I can't remember. It had like such a generic title. The Creation? Boring movie. Plus, he had John David, I suck charisma out of a room, Washington in that movie. Great look of the film. It has a pleasing aesthetic, but I really didn't like that movie at all. Creator. It's called The Creator. I was like, Creator. He's the director of Jurassic World Rebirth. I'm like, nope. I have no confidence in that. The way they described it, it just sounds like another Jurassic World. It just sounds like they're repeating elements from the first film where it's like, all right, we're going to be on the island. Like half the film is going to be, like the second half is all going to be stuff on the island, whereas we're following a family that's stuck there. So it's like we're literally doing the same fucking thing. And the first half is going to be this globe-trotting adventure where like Scarlett Johansson, who's a dino wrangler, which is basically a gender-bent version of Chris Pratt's character, and she's just going around the world like acquiring dino DNA because I guess all the dinosaurs are dying for some reason. You know, I'm just not looking forward to it. I'm glad you are, but I'm just not personally. Oh yeah, the new Avatar. I just don't really care about the Avatar films. Like I think the first one is fine. You know, it's Dances with Wolves with Pocahontas, the Blue Kitty Cat people. I do not like the second one. I think it's pretty, but I don't remember any of those characters' names. You have Nick Nack, you have Jake Sully, you have Zoe Saldana. I like the humans. I wish the humans like wiped them all out. I'm looking forward to that. I love how like in the new movie, it's like James Cameron is just stealing things from Avatar: The Last Airbender because now we're going to be introduced to the Fire Na'vi who are evil, which is like, okay, James. Okay, Jimmy Jam. But yeah, I'll see it. I'll review it, but I'm not looking forward to it.